Quick is really, really smart as a defender. And something that really stands out for me every time I watch, and this was before a lot of the six man of the year talk was starting to build for him. This was written in like early, I think February 1st, it published. So it was before a lot of that really started the end of the season when he was dropping a ton of points. But he had become such a reliable, solid team defender. Something that always stands out when I see the metrics, and I didn't include this in this story, is you look at advanced metrics that show how often defenders guard the other team's highest usage player. And you see that, and it's often the guys who you think about as like awesome defenders. Like I think Dylan Brooks spent the highest amount of time while he was on the floor last year, the highest percentage of time while he was on the floor last year, guarding the other team's best player. I shouldn't say best player, but highest usage player who was on the floor. For the Knicks, that guy was Quentin Grimes, who ranked super, super high in that stat and who was a good on-ball defender and almost always took the other team's best guy. He guarded guys from Pascal Siakam to Trae Young. You know, he almost always took the other team's top dog. Quickley, if you look at those stats, is like literally last in the league. He never guards the other team's best player unless it's on an emergency switch or something. He never does it. And it's not because he can't guard. It's because he is so reliable to have in the weak side corner, especially. Tibbs's defense puts a lot of pressure on the guy who is defending the shooter in the weak side corner. An extraordinary amount of pressure. Because what it requires you to do, basically the main concepts of a Tibbs defense are we are taking away shots at the rim. Period. End of sentence. That is it. You take away shots at the rim. If you take away the rim first, you will take away a lot of stuff after, but you have to take away the rim first. And so all motivations for a Tibbs defense are take away the rim. So you see them pack the paint more. And what it requires on the weak side is when a guy hits the paint, what the guy guarding the weak side corner shooter has to do is he has to come in to the lane to help and deter that dribbler from getting to the rim. And then he has to recover all the way back out onto that shooter in the corner and close out potentially on a corner three-point shooter, or at least disrupt him, get him to pass out of it, whatever. In the playoffs, we saw the Knicks go to extreme versions of that against the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? When they had like Isaac Okoro in the corner on those plays. And they were just like, we're not even going to close out on you. And the Cavs could not find that fifth guy who could hit that corner three. Osman didn't do it enough. And that's why the Cavs had the offseason they had. That's why they went out and they got George Niang and they got Max Strus, because now you can't defend them the way the Knicks defended them in the first round. Immanuel Quickley is really good at that. He has really long arms, even though he's not tall. He is really quick and he is very smart. So he's got the timing all the way down. And I wanted to write something that kind of taught people how he thinks the game, because I really enjoy talking X's and O's with him. He's very serious about basketball. He's very serious about watching film. He has really interesting thoughts on X's and O's of the game. He teaches me a lot, and I love asking about that stuff. So I was like, I feel like if you're a basketball head, you'll probably love learning about that too, you know? So that was really where it came from. And I was happy with how it turned out, and credit to him, by the way, because he was cool enough to help me out, look at some plays with me. And, you know, he even asked me, you know, if I could send him the story when it was done. Like he was really cool in helping me put all this together. It was I really appreciated it.
I mean, probably the best interaction. Another great story has just like a crucial, brief but important interaction between you and the subject was right in the middle of the story. He started bragging about my play, and you had no idea what he was talking about. So how did that go?
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? There was also a small detail that I left out of that story because it was kind of a personal triumph that had nothing to do with the story. So I wasn't going to include it, and I was never going to. But what happened was, so the way the story works is I use this one play to intro from, I think it was a Christmas game against Philadelphia 76ers, when 76ers come down the floor in transition and the Knicks are mismatched everywhere on the floor. And Quickley notices it scans the floor, and then starts randomly switching with his teammates onto guys, knowing that he's going to fix all the mismatches. And he does it. And the Knicks have a perfect defensive possession and they get a stop. And it's, you can see Quickley scanning the floor and doing it. And I wanted him to look at this play and I wanted him to explain to me, like, how the hell did you do that? How many steps ahead are you thinking? So I have the play on my phone. I went up to him at his locker before a game and I was like, hey, do you mind looking at this play for me? And just tell me what you're thinking about. I want to write something about it. And he's like, sure, no problem. So he takes my phone and it's got like the little screen grab, you know, like when you take an iPhone, it's just got like the screen before you press play. It's got the thumbnail or whatever it's called. And he looks at it, he goes, oh, this is the one where I fix all the mismatches. I was like, damn. He's, you know, he can recognize. And by the way, this was a month after it happened. This wasn't like the next day. It's like a month after it happened.
It's crazy.
So we looked at it. He gave me really interesting thoughts. Those are all in the story. He was able to break down how many steps ahead he's thinking, where he's looking, when he's looking, why he's looking there, why he's going for this switch, why he's going for that. I mean, it's, if you are interested in basketball, it is really interesting to hear his perspective on this kind of stuff. The next day I came in the locker room and as you know, the Knicks are not the most open organization. So I go in the locker room and a member of Knicks media relations says to me, hey, don't show clips to Quickley before the game. I was like, why? And he says, people just don't need to see, like, coaches don't need to see him come in and say, like, why is Quickley watching clips with Fred? And I was like, so if I walked up to him and interviewed him about the D train, then all of a sudden, like, that's cool, but we can't talk about basketball before the game. So I think it was a way of like, the Knicks don't want you talking to players and they don't want you getting chummy with players. They want you getting in with players. I said, he seemed to be really into it. Knicks media relations said to me, like, he didn't like it as much as you think he did. So that whole game, I'm like, damn, did Quick say something? And he's just like a polite, nice guy. So did he like say something to media relations? Like, hey, can you just tell Fred, like, I don't want to do that stuff before games. Cause sometimes he doesn't like to talk before games. I usually try to respect that. If there's some guys who only want to interview post game, some guys who only want to interview pre-game, I always try to respect that schedule. Like, you know, if you're cool and respectful of me, then I'll why wouldn't I be the same to you? And so, I was like, damn, like, I know sometimes he doesn't like to talk pre-game. Like, did I not read the situation well? Was I being kind of like, you know, was I pushing myself on him? Was I being weird? Was I was I out of bounds? And I felt bad all game. And then after the game, this was pre-game before a game against the Cavaliers, coincidentally. And then after the game, Quickley does his post-game press conference and he does his thing. And I'm in his scrum in front of his locker. And he turns to me and he says, did you see my play? And I said, what play? And he's like, I was like, do you mean like the three that you hit? Do you mean, like, what are you referring to? He said, I made an incredible pre-rotation on Isaac Okoro in the fourth quarter. Because we had spent so much time just talking about the nuances of defense and all of that. And I was like, you mean on that play with the steal? He was like, yeah, but it was the pre-rotation that was unbelievable. And then he says to me, I thought about that. And by the way, Knicks media relations is right there because they're like, you know, in there for the scrums and the press conferences and stuff. He says, when that play happened, I thought, oh, Fred would love that. And so I turned to Knicks media relations. I said, sounds like he hates our interviews.